So one of the issues that we have with Jesus' baptism, and I remember thinking about this a lot as a kid and struggling with it, not being able to understand what's going on here, is I knew that I had been baptized because I was a sinful person. Is that what's happening here with Jesus?
It's not, but it does pose a problem for the believer here to then why baptize? And obviously even John the Baptist here is like, I need to be baptized by you, and you want me to baptize you?
Yeah, you do see a reluctance of John. It's kind of funny to put yourself in the place of trying to tell Jesus, hey, that's not what this is for. Whenever you're trying to teach Jesus, you can be sure that you took a wrong turn. But it's clear why he's doing that, and it's understandable why he's doing that. That's he's baptizing for repentance. That's part of the act that we engage in baptism, and yet Jesus gives a different answer for why he's engaging in baptism, which is he's doing it to fulfill all righteousness. What do we take from that? It's an easy question, right? Only something that theologians have struggled with.
So definitely one that I struggle with a little bit as well, and we could take a look at this and say, well, he's paving the way for the believer, and say in a sense maybe he's fulfilling all righteousness there, but you could also say that he's fulfilling the law. Jesus said, I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill the law, and he was here to fulfill it perfectly in a way that man has not up to this point.
Yeah, and I think that obviously, with the idea of him being a priest and kind of the law associated with that we spoke of earlier, that would kind of make sense as far as fulfilling the law. Normally when we think of righteousness, what kind of definition do we give to that word?
Being good.
Okay, being good, yes.
So usually kind of your Sunday school definition. And, but righteousness is kind of the property of being right and justified in the eyes of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we have a tendency to think to confine it to the law, and obviously there's an application there, but it's a bigger, broader concept with that, and so when you think about a person being righteous, it's not too hard to see, the application toward the law, and then maybe a broader application to just doing the right thing or living in a right relationship with God, and obviously that expands a little bit beyond the written law, as Jesus pointed out, and like in the Sermon on the Mount, that there's broader applications to that. But how would that term righteousness apply to God? Because it's applied to God a number of times, and it gets a little bit more tricky when we start trying to apply that concept to God.
It's funny because I don't know if I kind of see it as tricky, but I kind of see, when and I think it's Isaiah, God talks about, the righteousness of man is like filthy rags and stuff, and it's comparing the righteousness of man to the righteousness of God, and it's pure, it's not got improper motivations in any way, shape, or form, but it is pure righteousness, as opposed to ours, which often comes a little tainted.
Yeah. I would say that the way that it becomes tricky for people is to think of God being in right standing with God.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, for me, I remember as a kid thinking, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Is there anything beyond? What are we missing when we struggle with this idea of trying to figure out how God would not be in right standing with God?
Well, yeah, I think it just comes down to the character and nature of God. God is not inconsistent, and the idea is that we can rely on the promises of God because it is His nature to be truthful, and if He's promised us something, then He's going to be. There are other conceptions of God that say He's unfettered and you can't hold Him down to anything, and and He doesn't have to stay true to His word and all this stuff. But the Christian conception of God is that He has a character and a nature, and that character and nature is righteous by definition. So, saying He's in right standing with Himself is just saying that He's true to His nature.
Okay, so he's eternally consistent, and that's a good thing that we don't have a God who's arbitrary or capricious. One of the things that theologians will point out is that righteousness also has a covenantal aspect, that to be righteous has to do with your standing within the covenant, and that ultimately has a relational nature to it. How does that change our understanding of what it might be for Jesus to fulfill all righteousness.
I guess in fulfilling all righteousness, in this case, for Jesus to be in right standing God, it means he's in perfect unity with God. And so I guess in looking at it that way from a covenantal aspect or a relational aspect, it's not merely did you follow the rules. So, but are you living in perfect unity and community, if you will, with God?
Yeah, and I think if we kind of apply that to Jesus' baptism here, we see that Jesus is fulfilling the relationship with God on our behalf. And so it's not necessarily, his repentance or his sin or anything like that has to be dealt with here. It's there's an aspect of he's covering the relationship for mankind and being the second Adam, and which is a much broader concept. One of the things that's really interesting about this idea, this expansion of the word or the understanding of righteousness to a more relational aspect, is that theologians will point to the fact that when God is spoken of being righteous, that there's an aspect of pointing out his love for humanity in his righteousness, and the fact that he will it describes the actions that God takes to keep the relationship with man. How does that change our understanding of righteousness from just keeping a list of rules?
It definitely takes the conception of God as kind of the lawgiver and the rule maker, but to more the loving Father, which obviously is at the heart of our Christian conception of God.
Yeah, it changes God into the relationship keeper, not just the rule giver, which is obviously something that's for us as human. I mean, when we think of God being the relationship keeper rather than just the rule giver, I mean, it completely transforms the way that we view God. I mean, nobody wants to, hey, I'm going to hang out with the rule giver.
I can think of the conception of getting, an order from the jerk of a boss that you have who is just giving you rules to follow as a jerk, and
right.
or that of actually maybe your dad who loves you and is looking out for you and wants what's best for you, and it's totally different how you might receive those.
Yeah, and it's interesting that then Jesus, all this is wrapped into the beginning of Jesus' ministry, that he's going to be keeping the law, that he's going to be pursuing the relationship with God, that he's going to be keeping the unity with God on our behalf, and that he's also fulfilling God's desire to keep that relationship with man and to not have it broken. And so all those things are wrapped up into this moment of baptism, and so that's a very interesting thing to consider as we look at this.